My name is Ikenna Nwaiwu. I am an independent API governance consultant. I kind of help organizations who are pretty poor in their API maturity, have kind of broken processes, to help them improve that. I am the author of that book, and that's my career experience. My background as a software engineer, and worked at various companies, but I also write a newsletter, and I recommend you check that out. Today's going to be this is going to be a light introduction to AI gateways. Just going to be introductory talk to AI gateways, and a bit of framework I'm putting together for some work I'm doing. And I will talk about a survey I ran earlier this year in the May-June period, and kind of 3 points I'm taking away from that survey around AI gateways. So if you're interested in AI gateways, this is the one for you. So first of all, there have been a few talks on AI gateways. The first talk in this track, and even in this previous talk, there was a mention of API security gateways as well. So just a bit of intro, like I said, it's quite introductory talk to AI gateways. Imagine this scenario: we have different Gen AI apps or agents who are using LLMs to do their work. What's wrong with this architecture? One answer is nothing, right? There's nothing wrong with this. It's a pattern that makes sense in some scenarios, but sometimes this pattern may introduce some risks, because this is a direct connection to the LLM, and it can lead to some risks. Okay, so what risks, right? Obviously, security and privacy risks, right? We're all kind of familiar with credential leakage, sensitive data disclosure. Data could be sent to the LLM that we don't want, or could be emitted by the LLM, PII, health information, sensitive information, things like that. Prompt injection attacks can happen, where attackers can use those LLM APIs to make the LLMs behave in ways we don't want them to. Okay, so there are loads of headlines around credential linkages. We're not going to, these are familiar things that we see often. And then the second category of risk, again, I'm just talking about risks, why we need these AI gateways, is content risk. And so, we can have, hallucinations. We have toxic or profane content, off-brand content that the LLMs can produce, which we don't want. This is one example I found somewhere where, this is real, it's a bit old, happened some time ago, but where you have a chatbot actually cause someone to self-harm because of, I think it was like a dating app or something, because of what the toxic information coming from the LLM, and there was nothing in between to protect from that kind of direct connection. The operational and performance risks as well, related to that kind of direct connection pattern, in terms of resilience, application latency, what happens if the AI service or inference service is not, it's down or not behaving fast enough. Also observability, right? We want that tracing, we want to be able to know what's happening in those interactions. And that's before we talk of the financial risks, okay? So denial of wallet attacks. People can use, again, in terms of governing that AI, that LLM API layer and access, right? People can exploit that, sending high volume of requests that can, cost the organization money, and obviously the resultant runaway costs. I had a conversation with, I hope this is clear enough, with the CEO earlier this year of a small company, and he was talking about how they were consuming this specialist kind of AI model, and they were not really logging what was happening. And so at some point they had this huge, bill shock, surprise, here's your bill. And they didn't really have any evidence to prove that. And so it's kind of order of magnitude increase in costs, which was an issue. So this is where, these AI models, AI gateways come in. I've kind of put them in this little kind of 2x2 category of risks that we face. But this is just my own categorization, right? We're well familiar with the OWASP, Gen AI, top 10 for LLM, and generative AI is probably the go-to thing that everyone goes to from a security perspective. The FinOS AI governance framework is also out there, as well as the Google SIF, which is quite a bit old now, but it's their much more comprehensive AI security, AI governance model. But how do we mitigate these risks? How do we mitigate this risk? Oh, right? You know, plop something in the middle. The computer science thing is, you know, introduce another layer of abstraction. And so the AI gateways come in here to be that kind of middleman to, you know, provide that unified API for access to those LLMs, but also provide that a centralized credential management, provide those guardrails to protect against, you know, toxic or privacy or compliance issues, providing those guardrails that inspect the input and outputs from the LLMs, routing, load balancing, semantic caching, looking at the meaning and intent of the request and serving it from a cache rather than just, you know, exact matches. Prompt management and cost control, one big factor. I think some people talked about that here. Being able to control those tokens being consumed, set budgets, and things like that. These are some of the core functionalities that the AI gateway produces. There are loads of AI gateway providers. Most vendors here who, you know, I've talked about provide AI gateways. So most traditional API management or API gateway vendors provide AI gateways now as a feature or as an add-on to their product, but they also, yeah, there's loads of AI gateway providers out there. I kind of classify them into two, okay? So kind of specialized AI gateways that are kind of really focused on just being an AI gateway, and then what I call evolved AI gateways, which are API gateways that have added on AI gateway features. This is kind of my, I guess, a classification or one I like to use. So they've just added in and really evolved to be an AI gateway. Just to explain, like I said, this is quite an introductory talk to AI gateway. So just to explain again, just give an example of how this works. Just give an example with token-based rate limiting, because being able to, you know, with traditional gateways, you have rate limiting based on volume of requests, but now we want to be able to be aware and really do rate limiting based on the tokens that we send, because that cost is important. And how does that work? Like I said, the AI gateway just sits in the middle. As an admin, you can set a limit, set a token limit to say we want to spend, you know, 100 tokens in 10 seconds, in 30 seconds, for example. That's the max. The AI gateway keeps track of that. And when we send send a prompt and get a response back, it just does simple calculation, add that up, because typically your LLM API will tell you, you know, how many prompts it receives, how many tokens in the prompt it received, and how many tokens in the response. So the the AI gateway just kind of tallies that up, and when you exceed it, then you get a HTTP 429 to say, sorry, you have exceeded that, your budget for that, okay? So I hope this just shows a simple example of how those AI gateway kind of works. So I've given this kind of brief introduction to AI gateways. Let me talk about something I call IGT framework. So earlier this year, I had to kind of do some work to compare a few AI gateways for some work I was doing. And so I really thought hard about, like, how do you do this? And you know, I came up with some checklists and things like that, which I used them, but I've tried to kind of refine this, and I just kind of opened a GitHub repo where I'm putting. So this framework really is, I'm calling it a conceptual framework for evaluating AI API governance and AI gateways, but really a way to really compare the features of AI gateways if you're going to choose, if you're having to decide to choose AI gateways. The AI gateway space, I would say, is not yet commoditized the way API gateways are, and so I think there's quite, in terms of features, there's quite lots of variability in the features AI gateways offer, would be my opinion on that. So when I say framework, this is not source code. This is simply a description of patterns, you know, checklists, and process metrics. I'm a process guy. I like to make sure we are actually delivering outcomes from that. This is a warning. This is a bit of pre-alpha. This is just putting thoughts there, right? This is just putting thoughts in a GitHub repo, but really documenting these patterns, you know, just to help in terms of being able to choose, you know, if you ever have to decide between adopting AI gateways, things to think about. These are thinking tools. So this is a bit of a diagram on what's involved. Again, this is just a collection of patterns under 4 categories: security, privacy, and compliance, cost optimization and performance, reliability and orchestration, developer experience, and observability. There are several patterns there. I don't intend to go into all of them here, but I'm documenting them on the repo. So this is just the introduction because, yeah, on the repo you have the patterns, you have the checklist, like I said. What I do want to talk about, though, I'll leave you with is what I call 3 points on AI gateway adoption. So in doing this AI gateway evaluation I did earlier this year, I did what I called a runtime AI governance survey. Okay, so I went to several companies and talked to them about how they were using AI gateways, if they were using AI gateways, how they were managing their access to LLM APIs. You know, what do you have in place in terms of technology processes? What are you doing? Okay, big warning on this, big warning, really small sample size here. Any statisticians, PhDs here will hang me for this, but the sample size was 20 people. I spoke to 20 people, so use my data with caution. But who did I talk to? Senior IT leadership people, CIOs, CTOs, was most of the people, engineering managers as well, and a little bit of kind of developers, as you can see, 10% there. And across different range of organizations, some were really large organizations of 5,000 plus, some were much smaller, less than 50 employees, kind of, and then people in between. The industries I spoke to were across IT, financial services, and hospitality. Those were the 3 main industries. What did I find? So the findings I'm going to use to support the 3 main points I want to make. Point number 1 is that before thinking of adopting this AI gateway, start by understanding what you do have in place. Obviously, start by understanding your current state of your runtime governance. I say this because when I ask the question, what are your biggest operational challenges in managing LLM API access and usage? Here are the top 4 answers. There were loads of others, but the first one was kind of maintaining visibility into how LLMs are being used by different teams and applications. That was the biggest thing. And then kind of security was second, to that. Handling errors, but these were the kind of top 4 of that. The next question was, to what extent has the organization implemented formal practices or processes for governing LLM API usage? A small percentage said, oh, we've fully implemented this. We have practices and things in place, but most people were partially implemented. I want to take a quick poll here. Who would raise their hand for fully implemented in the organization that you work with? Come on, you can do it. What about partially implemented? Oh, okay, so most people fall into that category there. Okay, so partially implemented here, processes have been started or implemented to some degree, not fully complete or functioning, that's what they'll say. I asked another question, how do you monitor the ongoing usage of LLM APIs? Okay, so centralized monitoring, your data being pumped into Datadog, Splunk, choose your observability tooling, was the way, okay? So I think this is important because many AI gateways, also provide dashboards internally for giving you that kind of observability or data on access, on usage, but it's also good to provide the functionality to be able to export, send that data using, OTel or whatever you like into some of these central mechanisms. But there are different ways, organizations are using to just monitor that access, and you can see that there. What type of tools or technologies are you using to help govern LLM API usage? Some of the questions I felt like I could go back and tune them, but this one, AI gateways, was actually one of the smaller numbers. The largest number was internal custom built tools, okay? So what does this tell us? I almost want to go back and dig in more details with some of the people who fill the survey, what that means, but could it mean that organizations are having to rebuild things you could buy off the shelf for whatever reason? If you remember from when we had when API gateways came on the scene, there were lots of organizations who were building, API gateways, and maybe later on had to transition and buy a commercial product or not, okay? But what we're seeing is a lot of companies are, using internal built, custom built tools to do that governance of that LLM API usage. I also asked, what are the primary functions or capabilities of your AI gateway or some other access management solution you're doing? The biggest thing they were interested in was authentication and authorization, having that in place. Rate limiting as well. Quota management was a close second there. That was important to them. What features or capabilities are you looking for in tools to support LLM API governance? I just had a few responses on this one, but I thought the last one was interesting. OAuth integration, token rate limit, and quotas was interesting there. These guys, I think, were using an AI gateway that didn't have that feature. Okay, so do note that. It will come to a point I will talk about later. Security scan protection and model support. So AI gateway vendors in the room, take note. Which of the following practices has your organization implemented for LLM API governance? Implementing technical controls for API access and usage monitoring, some sort of technical control there. Establishing clear policies. Again, this data point, great. Yes, have an AI gateway. Absolutely yes, but that's not that runtime technology control is not just the only thing. We know there are processes we have to put in place, training we have to put in place, practices, all the other things. It's a systemic thing that we need to, in terms of governing that properly. That whole process governance has to come in holistically. So that data, I hope, shows just that first point I was making there about. There are different ways, different things organizations are using at present just to govern that LLM API access. And again, I'm not saying you have to have an AI gateway. Like I said in the beginning, some patterns mean you don't need it, but if you do, it's good to see what organizations are doing there. Number 2 point, I'll say. So after I did that survey, I spent some time actually evaluating about 5 AI gateway, what I call enterprise AI gateway tools on my own kind of, if you like, IGT-AI governance toolkit for AI thing I'm putting together, framework for comparing. And what I found was there's quite a variability in what I'll call completeness of claimed features, okay? So the lesson there is, test, test, test. If you're thinking of using one of these tools, of course, test, 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 right? But really do, because, I think it's quite still, I would say, newish. Yeah, we evaluated 6 on that key point of, say, token-based rate limiting, which I think is essential as an AI gateway. We did see one commercial AI gateway that just didn't support this. What am I saying here? It's just like do test these things. It's the same old story. I'm not saying anything new here. Know your requirements, your non-functional requirements, your feature requirements, and do evaluate across all these things. Don't necessarily go with, if you have a provider that's already there in the estate, before you just use that, do check across other providers as well. For some others, it was on different plans and things like that, so do check that out. The final point I'll leave you with is this. Like I say, I'm an independent consultant. I'm a process guy. I help fix processes. And one of the techniques I use with my clients is something called A3 thinking, which is just a problem-solving approach. How many people are familiar with A3 thinking? Raise your hand. No. So if you're in the kind of lean community, this is what we use. I'm a big fan of this, but really I see this as a problem-solving thing. So yes, we're adding technology, but we're making sure we're optimizing for the results. What are the key metrics? We're starting metrics first. Metrics first. What are we optimizing for? What are the outcomes we want? And kind of working backwards. And this is a template I use when I work with my clients to make sure that we are actually solving for outcomes and not just propping in technology. So happy to go on with this maybe later offline, but yeah, this is something I use a lot. So that's all I would want to say. Conclusion here is, the direct connection comes with risks, okay? Comes with risk. It's a pattern, trade-offs, so it may work for you, but be aware of the risks. I'm putting together this IGT-AI, just a conceptual framework for evaluating AI gateways, and then these 3 points on AI gateway adoption. Understand your current state. Number 1, know what you have. You may or may not need this, so know what you have. Evaluate AI gateway features if you're thinking of adopting them, test thoroughly, and then use a structured problem-solving approach to make sure you actually do realize the benefits from your technology implementation. Thank you very much. You can subscribe to my newsletter. If you are interested in getting the full survey results, if you subscribe, I think I'll send this later when I clean up all the data. I'll send it to the people on my newsletter. So do sign up and follow me on LinkedIn. Thank you very much.